Hey everyone, Brendan Sider here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to a special review for the brand new Mogg's Motel album, self-titled release, featuring, of course, Phil Mogg, formerly of UFO, debut studio album, and it's the first new music from Phil Mogg since UFO's final album, the Salentino Cuts, that came out in 2017. So quite some bit of time already that it's been since we've gotten anything new from him. So this here is a nice little treat. Came out on September 6th of 2024. We're going to break it all down here. I'll do a full review and unboxing of it. But if you are new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, if you turn on notifications, you'll never miss an episode and you'll stay up to date on things like this. Hey, where we're talking about the brand new album, Mogg's Motel, which features Phil Mogg in there of UFOs. So as always, I like to jump back, do a little bit of history here. And we're going all the way back to 1968 here when UFO formed, because Phil Mogg has been the only consistent member in UFO throughout its entire life, all its many eras and lineups and things like that, all the way until their breakup in 2019. Even though it wasn't announced until this year, 2024, if you talk to Phil about it, he says that he feels like it ended officially in 2019 because that was when they played their last show. They had some new stuff lined up. It didn't take place. So their last show took place in 2019. And that's when he's considering that the band ended. So you might hear some people say that the band existed 51 years, or you might hear them say it existed 56 years. But I'm going with what Phil said. So 51 years that UFO existed. And that's such an amazing thing. And of course, we love UFO and nobody wanted to hear UFO is over. But in the wake of all that, we're getting this album here, Mogg's Motel. And the previous lineup to UFO, or when I say previous, the final lineup, I should really say, was, of course, Phil Mogg, who had been there from 68, Andy Parker on drums, who'd been there since 69, but Neil Carter was on guitar and keys. And he took over for Paul Raymond both in 1980 and in 2019 when Paul had passed away. So he was there at the end of it. And then, of course, we had Vinnie Moore on guitar since 2003 and Rob DeLuca on bass since 2008. And in all, UFO released 22 studio albums, including the final album that I mentioned, the Salentino Cuts. But the thing is, this album was a covers album. And, you know, I don't think that's what the band intended to be going out on. But of course, with the pandemic in 2020 and then Phil suffering from a stroke in 2022, it became the final album. But the last album of original new studio material is this one here from 2015, A Conspiracy of Stars. And so this album here now, Mogg's Motel, it's been 9 years since A Conspiracy of Stars. So 9 years since we got new original material from Phil Mogg. And all in all, with the final lineup of UFO, you know, moving and doing what they're doing and no longer happening, and now we're getting this here, even though this is coming out under Mogg's Motel, for me, it is basically just a name change because we still have, continuing with this lineup here, we've got UFO guitarist and keyboardist Neil Carter coming along for the ride. So let's go ahead and get into this album now and break it all down. As I said, it is their debut studio album. I'm saying it's really just a continuation of UFO because we've had so many lineups and so many changes that, you know, Phil, who's only the one consistent member that has been there from day one in the group itself, doing this here, if it sounds like UFO to me, it's still going to be UFO no matter what they call it, but I'm okay with it being under Mogg's Motel. Phil Mogg on vocals from UFO, and as I mentioned, Neil Carter on guitar and keys. So two guys from UFO there, but this lineup here is then backed by three guys from a band called Voodoo 6, which is a really great band. If you haven't checked them out, check them out. A lot of cool history to them as well. Tony Newton is on bass, and he's currently out with KK's Priest, and before that he was with Dirty Deeds. Then we got Tommy Gentry on guitar, and he played with Scottish band Gun. Then we got Joe Lazarus on drums. So those three guys from the band Voodoo 6, and adding in with Neil and Phil, and that makes up Mogg's Motel. So the album itself has 12 tracks on it, but they add in one bonus track, 13 tracks total on here. Taylor's Woods is that bonus track that's on here. And the whole album together, all 13 tracks, clock in at 55 minutes, which is a nice round time for things. 45 is right on the spot. Anything less for me always needs, it's a little too little kind of thing. So when we get into the 50 and 55 minute mark, that's good for me. I like that. So I think this album sits just right with those 13 tracks. Now, as I stated before, in my mind, this is really just a continuation of UFO. Not only because we got two former guys from UFO, but it's got all the hallmarks of the UFO sound that we know and love from it. And first off, Phil Mogg, his vocals on this, he is sounding as good as ever. I don't know what this guy's been drinking or taking or doing, but he sounds really good for how old and how long he has been going on in the music industry. But hearing him on this, of course, is going to immediately make anyone, I think of UFO. Of course, we've got his other side projects that pretty much do the same thing. We had Mogg Way and Dancing with St. Peter, and Mogg Way, which also had Pete Way in it, so two UFO guys at the time, which was really intended to be a UFO album, but they didn't have the rights to the name to be able to do it at that point, so it came out under their names respectively. So we've had that happen a couple different times over the years here, and all in all, again, it just sounds like UFO to me. But this band here, of course, featuring Neil Carter in here on guitar and keyboards, I think just makes this album go from strength to strength in it. But he gives it the roots, he gives it that classic feel of what any of us who have been listening to UFO for a very long time, know its whole history, are going to love. But the real praise of this album, of this group, I think goes to the backing band. It's the three guys from Voodoo 6 that really do the amazing work in this album that make it much more special than just another UFO album or just another thing that sounds like a knockoff of UFO or whatever. Because these guys, have been working together in that band. So they're coming in as an established group of musicians where this album here could have been a literal first album by a group, and it could have had that sort of new band feel to it where they maybe haven't gelled as much. I think this album here ends up sounding so much like UFO, meaning it has that history, it has that solid band vibe to it, one that is gelled because we've got three guys coming from another group, and then you've got Phil and Neil who've worked together before, and you put them all together in this thing here, and it's not just a bunch of new guys coming together. And so I think that really helps with the overall sound of the album itself, making it feel like this is an established band, an established group of musicians who have already written together before, and we're getting their best material out of them. At least that's the way it's coming across to me on here. So, the next point of this that I want to make, and I'm going to take it a step further, which to me, this is the most rockin' album that Phil has done in at least the last 20 years. But maybe even the most rockin' thing that UFO, in his time in UFO since Vinnie Moore, had with the band, because that goes back now to this point, 25 years since that lineup was there. But this album here really, really kicks off and just rocks from the get-go. I'm loving this thing. It's kind of the album that I had always wished that UFO would make with Vinnie Moore, because Vinnie Moore came from that shred guitar style background, but they never really put it into full use on the UFO albums. And of course, I get it, kind of wouldn't have fit perfectly, but I don't think they brought enough of that guitar flair out that they could have, and we get much more of that here. And so for me at least, this is what I want. This album here, call it what you want, sounds like a killer UFO album. Let's talk about some of the standout songs that are on this thing. We're going to kick off with track number one, Apple Pie. And so this was the first single, and I have to say, when I first heard it, It didn't do a whole lot for me, didn't move me very much, but it kind of grew on me. And it was one of those songs that as I was trying to check out the album and kind of warm up to it and get used to this idea that we weren't getting a UFO album, we were getting a Mogg's Motel album. Every time I heard this song, it got better and it got better kind of thing. But once I got the album as a whole and I've listened to it now entirely together, it is even better. It's one of those songs that I think fits the context of the album better when you hear the whole thing than just as a standalone track. And in the end of the day, I'm now really enjoying the song itself. But track number 2, Sunny Side of Heaven, which was the second single off of here, and that one initially right from the get-go blew me away. When I heard that one, it created a lot of excitement for me. It's what actually made me go back and listen to the first track a bunch more times to kind of really get a feel for things. But this one here does not disappoint. It's one of those ones that when I heard it, and I said, if the rest of this album is as good as this track here, we've got nothing to worry about. And as you've already heard from me talking about the first part of this review, now we're getting into this part here, you've got nothing to worry about because the whole album is good. Track number 5, The Princess Bride. This one here starts off with a melodic guitar intro, and then it erupts into a really rockin' song on the album. Maybe the most rockin' song on here. Kicks off with a killer groove on it. But what I like about this one here is the backup singers that are on it. They're mixed more in the foreground than what you might normally expect. And I really like that aspect. It's one of the reasons the song stands out to me, but it's also one of the reasons I like the previous song that I was talking about, Sunny Side of Heaven. That song jumped out at me too when I heard the female background singers in it. There was just a cool vibe between them, sort of the call and response with them and Phil Mogg and the way that he sings, and liking that a lot. And you get that a number of times on the album. So if you two liked that when you heard the single Sunny Side of Heaven, it's in The Princess Bride, it's in a few more of the cuts, so you do get that stuff throughout. Track number 7, Tinker Tailor. This one here kicks in right away. There's a number of songs on the album that have that melodic guitar intro bit to the point where they're kind of all starting that way. And I got one impression listening to the album the first time before really getting a feel for it and going back and listening to it a second time and understanding that, okay, the album does rock. Sometimes it just takes a while to build and build before we get into that. But this one here does. It kicks off right away. It's one of the things I like about it. It's got a very rhythmic feel to this one here, another good groove. But also the refrain, when he sings Tinker Tailor Soldier Sailor, and that sort of rhyming but also rhythmic way that he does it with the music in it, it's a very cool thing in here. Bottom line, it's a great song. Track number 11, Shane. Both the guitar and keyboards in this one here really stand out to me. It's got a bit of an orchestrated feel to it that I like a lot. But again, the song rocks that's in here, and there's no shortage of songs rocking on this album here. Right from the opening riff, this one is great. But I want to give an extra little shout out here to Tommy Gentry, the lead guitar player for the group. Neil does some lead as well, but really he is the one in here that deserves some extra praise for all the amazing top-notch guitar work that he does on this album. So let's take a look at this thing. Front cover, right from the get-go, cool album cover, pulled me right in. Even though we don't get the lightning bolts in the 2Gs, the way that they write that up has that UFO vibe to it. And I don't know if he really wanted to distance himself from it, but yet have a callback, or whether he didn't have the rights to put the lightning bolt in. I think he should have put the lightning bolts in. They were in when he did the Mogg Way album, but that's okay. We all know what this is. So cool artwork right away. There's the backside of it. I like the songs just stacked like that. So here's the thing now. On the spine, they say Phil Mogg, Mogg's Motel. The thing is, this really is a band under the name Mogg's Motel, and I hope they keep it that way as the band name, and they don't revert back to Phil Mogg, Mogg's Motel, and then later releases are just done under the solo name, because there is such a band vibe to this thing. As I said, they've gelled so well, or sound like they've gelled so well in terms of the quality of the music that we've gotten, that for me, this is a band. This is not a solo album. So I think this may just be to sell some more, let us know who this is. And on the cover, we don't see the name Phil Mogg anywhere. It does just say Mogg's Motel. But wanted to point that out. All right, so it is a digipack. We open it up. We get some more art that's on the inside there. There's the CD. I'll pop that out and show you what's behind it. Just a little bit more art like that. And then we got a booklet that's in here, which let me pull out. All right. So front cover, just like we saw before. We get the guys, the players in there. And we've got lyrics and stuff like that. We don't get a lot of band shots or anything that's in here. We get this one here, I think recorded at the filming of the first video, Apple Pie, because everyone's in those same outfits, which, you know, works well if you can get a video and a photo shoot, you know, for the price of one in there. And then they're using that on the billboard that's back there. I found it interesting that there is no UPC number on here. It actually was on the hype sticker itself on the front. I don't know why they didn't put it on, if that's intentional or they just forgot, but there you go. I don't know what that tells you. Bottom line on this album, it's everything you want from a UFO album. If you're a UFO fan, you got to check this out. I think if you're here, it's because you're a UFO fan. Phil Mogg, synonymous with that. But don't let the name of it, meaning Mogg's Motel, throw you from it thinking it's going to be something other than that. If you are hesitant because it isn't UFO, but you're a fan of UFO, you've got to check it out because, again, it's in the tradition and style of UFO's music. Phil just keeps right on going. You know, as I said, you know, he's been part of all the lineups. He's changed the lineup many different times. He's been the sole person in UFO since day one, but yet the stuff always sounded like UFO, and this just keeps doing the same thing right here. So I think the pedigree that's in this, bringing in the musicians that he did, the three guys from Voodoo 6, bringing Neil Carter along with him in here, it just keeps the quality of what we would expect from Phil Mogg going. And regardless of whether this is under Mogg's Motel or what it is a great album, highly recommended. Do yourself a favor, check this out. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with the new Mogg's Motel album. All right, there you guys go. That is my review for Phil Mogg, Mogg's Motel, self-titled debut release that, as I said, is so much better than any standard debut album you would normally get because these guys really feel like they've gelled. This is like it's their second or third album or something like that, in my opinion. It's just really that good. All right, everyone, let me know your thoughts. Leave them in the comments. We'll have a great conversation about it there. And otherwise, take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.